I believe that your team is partaking in what I would consider to be the best matchup of the week at Texas A&M. And let's start out with that college football ranking. Does it matter to you at this point? There's a lot of football to be played. They
Oh man.
12, right?
Yeah, I would say right now Auburn's right where they should be in the rankings. They've got a lot left in front of them, and they have the consensus hardest schedule left in college football. So this committee released some rankings. They brought Mississippi State out at 17. They're still left on our schedule. So whether they stay there, they got a match up with Arkansas this weekend. But hypothetically speaking, if they win that matchup, you just came off a top 10 Ole Miss. You've got number 17 Mississippi State. You've got Alabama, who's sitting at number 2 right now. And if you get through that gauntlet, we've got Texas A&M this weekend, but if you get through that gauntlet, you've got to play Georgia again. So there are plenty of chances for this team to prove that they are where they should be right by the end of it. I think it's a really good spot. And I think of all the 2-loss teams, similar to 2017, this might be one of the best shots that any 2-loss team has ever had to get into this playoff. I don't see how you leave the SEC champion out of it.
No, you don't. And that 2-loss scenario not just involves you, but of course, Ole Miss and Texas A&M. The advantage that you guys have, obviously, is that one of the losses is out of conference for Texas A&M. Both losses in conference, but they've already slayed Alabama head-to-head. Have that taken care of. You guys would have to do that anyway, or the conversation's null and void. Ole Miss probably in the 3rd position from that standpoint, but it could be interesting for those of us that don't have a dog in the fight, that just love to see chaos. If either Texas A&M runs the table and gets some help from you, or you guys run the table, and then that takes care of itself, and you create the 2-way tie and march on to Atlanta. That would be.
Well, Texas A&M has 2 kind of iffy losses on their schedule, Mark.
Yeah.
So if they ran the table, I think you could make an argument, because I don't think there's anything Georgia could do to get left out of this playoff. Even if they lose the SEC championship, if it's to a 1-loss Alabama or if it's a 2-loss Auburn, I think Auburn gets in. All of college football hates the SEC because there will be two teams from the conference, and I think Georgia makes it in no matter what at this point. And when you're looking around college football, look what they did to Cincinnati, right? They put Cincinnati at 6, which essentially tells me what they think of that win against Notre Dame. I think they have no shot here. So I think there's a better chance that 2 SEC teams get into this playoff than there is that Cincinnati makes it at all. The Big Ten champion, assuming that it's Ohio State or Michigan State, is definitely going to be in. And then you got Oklahoma, who's just hovering on the outside at number 8. And with the things that are going to happen in front of them, I still think they have a decent shot to get in as well, too. So Auburn has plenty of chances to prove they belong in this conversation. That's the blessing and the curse of playing in the SEC. You've got when the season started, a lot of people thought we had the 2nd hardest schedule next to Arkansas. Now, we're sitting here, and the way things have panned out, you're looking at Penn State or Texas, and you're thinking, which was the tougher non-conference test? I think you can argue Penn State was, right? So you've got the hardest schedule.
That's my vote.
Football, right? You got the hardest schedule in college football. And Brian Harsin is sitting here in week 10 with the best record of any first-year FBS head coach so far this year. And the hardest schedule. They're getting better every week. They're making strides. And then the emergence of consistent Bo Nix. This is a scary proposition. If he plays up to his potential, it opens up a lot of possibilities for Auburn down the stretch here. So I think this team kind of goes as he goes. Teams have been they've shown that they're willing to sell out to stop the run and make Bo Nix beat them. I think we could expect that on Saturday versus Texas A&M.
It was only 5 or 6 weeks ago that, coming off the loss to Penn State and a shaky performance at home against Georgia State, losing to LSU in the second half, that I was already hearing ridiculous rumblings about Brian Harsin and the fan base not being happy. Well, you turn it around against LSU. You have a forgivable loss, just like everybody else against Georgia. And now back-to-back very strong performances against quality competition. Arkansas on the road, Ole Miss at home. And this team is looking strong.
Yeah, listen, it's a fickle fan base. Brian Harsin was not a popular hire. Our AD, Alan Green, went out and he got his guy. And when he came in, he repeatedly talked about having to change culture. Now, our last coach left a lot of talent, but he also left some bad habits. Brian Harsin has spent the better part of the offseason and the first half of this season working out those bad habits. You know, we had questions about some of the talented guys who weren't starting in the Monday pressers. I've asked him about some of those guys. He said, listen, we're going to play the guys who practice hard. So if you're not seeing a guy, he hasn't earned it in practice. And he's proven that, yeah, I felt like he was falling on this, or he was ready to die on this hill. He will he's going to change culture at whatever cost. And guys are going to work hard, and they're going to try, and they're going to understand that it is a complete privilege to play football for Auburn University. So now what you have is he goes out in the offseason, he gets TJ Finley. We hear all offseason that TJ is pushing Bo to be his best. And then he does the unthinkable, because under Gus, benching Bo was an impossibility. But against Georgia State, as you referenced, he got benched. He comes back after that. He goes on the road to LSU. And though statistically it wasn't a great game, he did some amazing things that game. And we get our first win down there in 21 years in Death Valley. Now, LSU's a little bit of a mess, but it is the start of something good, some good momentum for them. Arkansas comes. Not a lot of people thought we could win that game, and they win it convincingly. Ole Miss comes, still a lot of doubters, and now we're at Texas A&M, and you still have some people who aren't on the train. I really believe that's about Bo Nix. It's about which Bo Nix is going to show up 2.5 years. Some people are not convinced that he's can do it 3 games in a row, but I think he's starting to have some believers. Count myself as one of them. I was skeptical at the beginning of the season whether this transformation job could be pulled off in one off season. And look where he's at. He's playing his best ball now. They're keeping him within himself. And I think that Mike Bobo has quietly done a phenomenal job play calling so far this year and putting guys in the best position to make plays.
You've had what I consider to be 4 quality games, Penn State, and then the 3 in conference. But there's going to be a lot of people that are going to see Auburn play for the first time tomorrow night because, like I say, it's a thin schedule in college football across the map. This is the best matchup, I believe, in college football tomorrow with most talent on one field. And so just give us a feel for, we know about Tank Bigsby. A lot of people should know about him. He's a monster and has been since he stepped on campus. Just those players on both sides of the ball that people may see for the first time and be impressed.
Well, you know, beside Tank, who is the obvious name, Embo, they've got a kid down there. His name is Jarquez Hunter. He is a true freshman running back. He's just 100 yards behind Bo in total rushing for the season. He burst onto the scene. Tank slowed down a couple games early this season. There was some conjecture about whether he was hurt or not. Jarquez has come in and quietly put together a very good freshman campaign. He is a load to tackle. He squats 600 pounds. He's an absolute monster. And this coach has said that he earned it in practice. He earned those reps in practice. Now, the senior, Sean Shivers, which is what everybody assumed he would be the number 2 back, missed some games, and this freshman just burst on the scene, and he took the number 2 spot and just never gave it back. Now we're playing all 3 backs. So watch out for Jarquez Hunter on the offensive side of the ball. On the defensive side, over the last few weeks, we've gotten healthier. So this is a very, very, very good run defense. We returned the top tackler in the country in Zacoby McClain. You got to know this name. He's going to be everywhere. He finished last week with 14 tackles versus Ole Miss. He just all over the place. Right next to him playing is Owen Papo, our other linebacker. Owen was a top 5 tackler in the SEC last year. We returned to both, but he was out with injury. He came back with a vengeance this week and made his presence felt. But while he was out, his backup, Eku Leota, again, all over the place. This is a deep, talented linebacker core. The defensive line is playing well. And then look out for Jalen Simpson at safety. I think, again, like you said, there are so many first names that people are going to be seeing. Here, like, what do we know about Auburn? We were picked to finish 6th in the SEC this year by the media. And we're sitting here in November talking about them being in contention. So it's going to be interesting. On the other side, you got Texas A&M. This wasn't their quarterback of choice to start the season, right? King got hurt. Calzada, I think, has come in and done a serviceable job there. But look for these guys to really get after him. His completion percentage is not great. His adjusted says that he's not that accurate at times. So we'll see if we can get back there and bother him some and force him into some mistakes.
Serviceable, great term to put on one Zach Calzada, who had the better of the two arms between the two, but a lot of mistakes out of him early. He's become, let's say, more serviceable. He's starting to eliminate the mistakes. It's not necessarily like some kind of light switch went on, like he's become a different player and some top 10 quarterback in the country, but he's gotten better eliminating mistakes and giving Texas A&M a chance to lean on the defense and Isaiah Spiller to get the job done. Of course, with Texas A&M's win over Alabama, that's opened up the race to everyone to a certain extent. Auburn certainly has control. They've got a number of rough games ahead of them, but with Alabama at the end, they've got they've got control of the division, but then Texas A&M can wrestle it away. And then Alabama, of course, has control as well. It's going to come down to the Iron Bowl if Auburn's able to win through. But let's get to Saturday night. Auburn, let's clean up any injury possibilities coming off a bye week. You're pretty confident, even though you still have yet to hear from Jimbo Fisher this week, that Tyree Johnson's in good shape.
Yeah, so we'll hear from Jimbo Fisher on the SEC teleconference. He speaks at about 11:30 Central down here, but he seemed pretty confident on Monday that Tyree Johnson would be good to go. Said he was expected to return to practice on Monday after leaving at the end of the South Carolina game. The injury kind of looked a little bit nervy, to be honest. The way it happened, it was kind of coming off the edge, but it sounds like it was a minor issue and should be good to go. As for the rest of the team, pretty healthy. Aside from the guys that were previously ruled out for the year after having surgery and all that, sounds like everybody else is pretty much healthy. And guys like Caleb Chapman got another week to get healthy after came back right before the bye, so he had another week to heal. But 8 weeks is a real grind to play. So just listening to Jimbo Fisher on Monday, he said he thought the bye did a lot of good for his team to kind of rest up for a really, really challenging stretch to finish the season. I don't think they let up the gas pedal one bit with Auburn and Ole Miss and LSU to finish the year. I think they realize they've got a lot to play for the final 4 weeks, but feel pretty healthy going into it.
Yeah. So again, to set up the SEC Western Division race, Alabama, of course, in control at 4-1, but Auburn is 3-1, and that's why I make the statement that it could come down to the Iron Bowl. If Auburn takes care of business, everybody kind of assumes Alabama will. Mississippi State and Ole Miss and Texas A&M with all 2 losses, so obviously they need help. This first major step for Texas A&M comes into play against Auburn. And, of course, if the Aggies can get Bama into a 2-way tie, then head-to-head comes into play, and the Aggies are in great shape. If it's more than a 3-way tie, then, boy, it's anybody's guess. Then we've got to go through the tiebreaker rules that become so complicated from there. But there's football to be played. Texas A&M fans would love to have tiebreaker rules in play and to be able to have to figure all that out. That would be a good thing. For right now, it's Auburn, and one of the more attractive games of the season. Bo Nix playing some of his best football of his career in recent weeks. Just your thoughts about the way this one matches up, because it should be a good one.
Boy, I think the line is at -4, and that's right. Two teams feel very similar. Two of the top three defenses in the SEC, and so I don't think this game is going to be necessarily a high scoring shootout. I think you're going to see something in the high teens to low 20s, and boy, it's for me, it's really going to come down to who takes care of the ball better. Both quarterbacks have kind of had a little uptick in recent weeks. I think Zach Calzada's looked a little more comfortable too. But the key for A&M on Saturday will just not allow Bo Nix to extend plays. I think that's going to be the biggest key is staying disciplined in their pass rush lanes, and withstanding maybe a little bit of an early surge on the part of Auburn. They can't have what happened against Arkansas and come out and kind of be punched in the mouth right away. I think the start to get off to a good start is really important. But they're going to have to contain Bo Nix. I think it all starts with him. And I also have a ton of respect for Tank Bigsby and what he's able to do. He's been tremendous. So it's going to be a really good test for this A&M defense. And, they've kind of had a couple weeks now playing Missouri and South Carolina, and going to have to ratchet up the intensity back up to, the Alabama level and where they played at there, because they've got a tremendous test coming into Kyle Field on Saturday.
Folks, please like the video, share these videos out on social media, and subscribe right here at the Voice of College Football. Yeah, good Bo Nix runs around and extends plays and drives the defense crazy and throws it when he needs to and runs it for big gains when he needs to. Bad Bo Nix runs around like crazy, but extends plays and then makes bad decisions and throws it where he shouldn't and across the field. And it seems as though he's cleaned that up for the most part with only 2 picks this year, 9 touchdowns. Zach Calzada has played better, of course, as of recent as well, 12 touchdowns and 7 picks. And you mentioned Tank Bigsby not having any kind of banner year, but he's one of the best backs in the conference, if not the nation. That's more about the defenses he's facing and the offensive line play. But that could be a real man's game up front in terms of what's going to happen in the trenches, and Tank Bigsby coming at that Texas A&M front.
Yeah, I think they're going to have to get a good push, and that front's going to have to play well, especially the interior. Guys like McKinley Jackson and Jaden Peavy are going to have to step up. You'll probably see them rotate to Marvin Leal and into kind of the interior too. They've done that a little bit when they needed to stop the run. I think they did that against Arkansas in the second half. That was what allowed them to kind of contain the run a little bit. And you're right on Bo Nix. I mean, one of the things that Jimbo Fisher talks about is when you look at this week, you have to be careful about getting too far upfield when you're rushing. You've got to be disciplined in your pass rush lanes and almost try to compress the pocket instead of just going after him, because A&M just needs to turn on the film from last year to see some of the escapability and some of the plays that he made. I think I remember one in the second half when felt like the play went on for forever, and it ended up resulting in a touchdown. And so A&M's really got to be disciplined in their pass rush lanes, and it can't just be about sacking the quarterback. It's got to be kind of compressing the pocket and forcing him to get rid of the football that way, because he'll do absolute damage up with his legs if you give him the chance.
Yeah, he's third on the team in rushing, and it's even beyond that, as we say. It's more about extending plays. And depending on your regional preference or your generation, Fran Tarkington, Russell Wilson, Johnny Manziel, whichever direction you want to go, to compare Bo Nix when he's running around from sideline to sideline in the backfield looking for a receiver downfield. It's fun to watch. That's fun to watch.
Things he does a good job of is he keeps his eyes downfield the entire time. So the moment something does pop open, he's there ready to take advantage of it.
Is there any particular slant to this game in regards to a rivalry? So in the SEC Western Division, obviously, when it comes to Arkansas, there's a certain connection there. Of course, Alabama is everybody's target. LSU's become the rival that the SEC is designated at the end of the schedule. And any certain flavor to this Auburn matchup? I know that the games have been tremendous for the most part throughout the years.
Yeah, I don't think there's any particular slant necessarily. I think the way these two teams are playing kind of ratchets it up. But the only weird thing about this rivalry is the struggles that the home team has had actually winning the game, and I know that's been talked about this week and kind of downplayed, at least on the A&M side, that it doesn't really matter. But Auburn's the only one that's won a home game in this series. Otherwise, the road team has taken every other game, and so that's kind of a weird slant to this game that I think A&M would obviously love to put an end to. But that's really been the big thing this year. But I think both sides know it's a big game. Not really a ton of connections between Brian Harsin and Jimbo Fisher, but Jimbo Fisher spoke about him this week and the wonders he's done especially as an offensive guy, getting Auburn to play the way they are and get them in good positions, and Mike Bobo and but there's no doubt these two recruit against each other quite a bit. So that's actually heightened importance as well.
And the way that fan bases react, especially in the SEC, and especially to a first-year head coach who's not known as Brian Harsin coming in from Boise State, it's just funny to think about, hey, once he lost to Penn State, and once he had lost a game in the SEC and was trailing LSU, looking bad at that point, my goodness, it was that Brian Harsin can't coach, and he's going to have a short tenure at Auburn, and here we are just a couple weeks later. Things have completely changed. He's flipped the narrative with a comeback win against LSU and some other impressive wins, most notably against Ole Miss, of course, Saturday night at home. So
even when they got rid of Gus Malzahn, I think when Brian Harsin came in, people kind of thought, who? Because I don't think a lot of people knew a lot about him, but he's done a tremendous job to get them playing the way they are and have them top 15 in the nation in his first year there. He's really done a tremendous job.
13-5 against the spread. That's our record here as of last week. 107-69 against the spread here at the Voice of College Football. So you can catch those picks on Patreon. You can also catch Andrew's picks. We've got a little 12-pack competition, friendly competition of sorts between Andrew. We got about 20 media members, myself, and we pick a 12-pack of college football games straight up and against the spread every week. And then again, you get more picks from me. What's that, Andrew?
I think I'm above 500 on those.
Nice job. Well done. Again, my picks as well. You get the full top 25 from me. 13-5 against the spread. I can't promise that every week, folks, but 107-69 for the year against the spread. The money line records 134-44. All right. I was asked last night, Andrew, by a caller, who was the lowest ranked team in the initial college football playoff rankings that could make the playoffs? So I went down to
I believe it's 16, right?
What's that?
I believe it was 16, right?
Well, I was asked my opinion on how low of a ranked team could possibly make a run and make the college football playoff. What's mathematically or reasonably possible? It's obviously not probable, but possible. And I collected these three teams in the SEC West. I think you've got Ole Miss, Texas A&M, and Auburn. Auburn, from a division standpoint, has the leg up since they've only lost one game in conference. Texas A&M has the advantage of beating Alabama already head-to-head, and then you've got Ole Miss there as well. And they're all 6-2, and they're all clumped around 14, 15, 16 in that range. So it's not anything that necessarily should be focused on because there's so much football against really good teams to play. But that's the scenario that I see, is that those three teams, and again, especially Texas A&M and Auburn, because they have those two advantages to catching Alabama. Hey, if you get to the SEC championship game, regardless of having two losses, you've got a shot at getting to the college football playoff.
Yeah, I think A&M would definitely benefit from some craziness in November. And look, the way out September and October went, anybody who thinks that things are just going to run chalk and smooth sailing into the rest of the year is crazy. There's going to be upsets and things in November, and so for A&M, You know, it was crazy when it was brought up a couple weeks ago by one of our subscribers. Said, you know, what's our path to the college football play? And this was after they beat Alabama, and you know, the thought was, okay, well, you know, get past Missouri and handle that, and then get past South Carolina. When you start to look at it, I do think you could make an argument that Auburn, A&M, and Ole Miss have an outside chance at the college football playoff for what you mentioned. If you look at, if A&M say we're able to win out and win against Auburn, win against Ole Miss, that's 2 more top 15 wins that they've added to their resume. That would be a win over then number 1 Alabama. That would be a top 15 win over Auburn and Ole Miss. You get to the SEC championship game, and if you knock off Georgia, that would basically be 2 top 5 wins over Alabama and Georgia, added in 2 other top 15 wins. I don't know that there's going to be a lot of other programs that can match up with that sort of resume. And I think the same could be said for Auburn. If they're able to get to, you know, if they're able to get to Georgia, to Atlanta, and that would mean beating Alabama the last week of the year in the Iron Bowl, probably beating Georgia as well, and they'll have a top 15. They'll have 2 top 15 wins over Ole Miss and A&M as well. I think you could absolutely make that argument. So there's going to be craziness in November. They would probably need some craziness to go their way as well, and have some things happen in the Big Ten. Maybe have Oregon lose again, have Oklahoma lose, although it didn't seem like the committee had a lot of love for their record and their slate so far. But you know, I think there's as crazy as it sounds, there's going to be a 2-loss team that eventually makes the college football playoff. And so, you know, if you build your resume and you get to the end of the year, I don't think there'll be a team that has a better resume or 2 better wins than A&M if they're able to beat Alabama and Georgia.
Yeah, I'm going to make it simpler than that. I don't even think it matters what happens elsewhere in the country.
Yeah,
I don't think it matters at all. I think if you win the SEC, you're in. And so if you get 2 losses and you win the SEC, it doesn't matter what's going on elsewhere in the country. I think what the fascinating part of it is that Texas A&M needs, obviously, to win out. Texas A&M needs Alabama to lose. That's most likely going to be to Auburn.
Yeah.
That's the most likely candidate. So Texas A&M is going to be rooting for Auburn in the Iron Bowl, and then obviously it has to win its games. If Ole Miss continues to win, which there are certainly a number of games in which Ole Miss could lose, they play A&M. That would be the loss that would knock them out. So boom, that knocks out Ole Miss, losing to Texas A&M. So you got a 3-way tie between Alabama, Auburn, and Texas A&M. That's what I don't know. I don't know if you know the tiebreaker procedures when it comes to that, because they're all going to have the same conference record and division record because they all won their Eastern Division games. So
I think it would come down to head between the 3 of them, and I think A&M would obviously, if they were to win out, would have the two wins over Auburn and Alabama. So I think that would end up doing it. But you're right. I mean, and I think the thing to remember is, as Alabama's lost the last 2 times they've gone to Jordan-Hare, so I mean, that's not going to be an easy game at the end of the year with the way Auburn's playing. You know, that's always a game that gets interesting and is going to be a tough place to play. And, you know, crazier things have happened. So you just kind of have to play the week in front of you. But I do think, you know, it's crazy to think after the Mississippi State game, you know, fans were talking about if A&M was even going to make a bowl, just with the way the SEC slate coming up. And now, you know, a month later, kind of, you know, playing out the college football scenarios, it's just crazy to think where the season has kind of gone between when we talked about a month ago this time with the Alabama game coming up and where we are now. Like it's been a crazy month.
Yeah, the players and coaches should not be thinking college football playoff. They got to be focused on the next play, the next rep, the next all of that. Not even the next play in the game coming up on Saturday, what they're doing today, because it's going to be that tough of a grind. But it's always fun for us to talk about it.
We can do it.
Again, Auburn, Ole Miss, Prairie View for the break. to get ready for LSU. So you're talking about three extremely talented teams. LSU obviously not having the best of seasons, but they've shown themselves capable beating Florida recently. And again, Auburn and Ole Miss the next 2 weeks with a trip to Oxford. Texas A&M
really
can get through that.
It's a really tough stretch to finish the year. And I think that was kind of the message heading into the bye last week. Andrew Monaco, who does the radio show, mentioned, coach, beat the hell out of the bye week. That's kind of the phrase every week of that, down at A&M. And Jimbo Fisher kind of said, no, it is about that this week though, because we coming out of the bye week, we have Auburn, Ole Miss. We have to go to Death Valley and play LSU, which is not going to be an easy game because there's going to be a lot going on during that week, with it being at Orgeron's last week, and I think players will be up for that game and want to beat a rival. You talk about a rivalry, that'll be a game that that LSU coaching staff will want to bring everything they have to beat A&M, and it's a tough stretch to finish the year, but I think A&M and Auburn are both playing as well as they have all season, and so that's what makes Saturday so interesting, is when you look at the offensive line for A&M. I mean, they're playing as well as they have all year. They're healthier. I think the defense has played up to where we expected them to play coming into the year, and Jalen Weidemeier's had a couple good weeks in a row, and Zach Calzada's getting more confidence. So it's going to be a really interesting game on Saturday.
Texas A&M Auburn, a huge one in the SEC Western Division on a Saturday. Andrew Hattersley, Gig'em 247 Sports. Join him and the rest of the staff right there, and join Andrew for post game on our SEC channel, and we will announce as to whether that post game is going to be anywhere else, but it definitely will be here on the SEC channel. So join Andrew after the game for Auburn, Texas A&M post game. Andrew, appreciate you stopping by as always and breaking it down for us.
Yes, sir. Thanks for having me.